outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good morning, viewers and listeners. Welcome to the Weekly Review. I'm your host, Paul Hazard, and with me this morning is the wonderful Leanne Lax and the dazzling John Gibbs. Thank you very much to Lucy Newberger, who sat in the hot seat last week while I was away. She did a fantastic job, and I can let you into a little secret. If you would prefer her dulcet tones compared to my Northern Ireland drawl, she'll be back in the hot seat next week. Apparently there's some kerfuffle in the North Pole and I just have to go and sort it all out. You know how it is anyway.
It's a busy time.
We're going to get on with the show right after these messages from our sponsors, who are John Catt. In fact, John Catt brings the show to you all this morning. They're publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. You can level up your professional development today by visiting johncattbookshop.com and exploring the full range of titles. And for Christmas, if you put in the code JCTTR2425, you'll get 20% off. We're also brought to you today by Parentkind, a national charity representing parent views and voice and championing parental participation in education and school life. By fostering strong school-parent partnerships, we can boost student attendance, improve behaviour, and enhance academic performance. Join the movement that's reshaping education for the better. Visit parentkind.org to learn more about reaping the rewards of working in partnership with parents. And we're also sponsored today by Teachers Talk Connect. Teachers, join the Teachers Talk team in Manchester on Saturday, the 1st of March, 2025 for Teachers Talk Connect, our biggest free event ever. Hear from main stage speakers, including Lee Parkinson and Kate Jones. Attend specific subject matter CPD sessions and experience amazing networking opportunities too. Tickets are free for all teachers and leaders. Visit ttradio.org to find out more and get your ticket today. So, on with our first stories today. During the week, Children's Commissioner Dame Rachel D'Souza said that the government's so-called mission-led themes and policies are underway, and as a result, we should build a common vision of childhood, one that enables our children to flourish, and one that enables all the adults in a child's life, including those in public services, to build more relational forms of engagement. Leanne, a vision for childhood, it sounds lovely, it sounds laudable. Is she right that we should have a vision for childhood?
Yeah, I think she's right. We should have a vision of what we want childhood to look like. I think, again, it's more than something that just teachers should thrive for and something that teachers can create. It needs to be a joint effort between government and education and society as a whole. The article touches on two words that they want children to achieve and thrive, and that apparently this is new.
Kind of wonder what have we all been doing for decades then?
I mean, the two of you are later into your careers than I am, but I think that's what I've been doing for the past 11 years. So I don't know why it's new.
Yeah.
So,
just seeing myself, I'm just remembering, I should have said in the introduction, we're all wearing our Christmas jumpers today because I don't think any of us are available next week. Therefore, we're celebrating today. John, Leanne says an interesting thing there. She talked about, the whole child. I get a little bit worried when I hear about public services coming together and all these different government bodies and groups, many of whom can't agree what the day of the week is, let alone come up with a vision. And I'm reminded of that phrase, a camel is a horse designed by a committee.
Yes.
Surely we need a vision that's more than just those two things, and that involves the whole child. We're going to talk in a short while about teachers teaching, curiosity, aspiration, ambition. Surely it's much more than achieving and thriving.
Yeah, achieving and thriving, and that was set up, isn't it, as a sort of the two things you can't quite do the two things together, which is a daft idea. It strikes me.
I couldn't understand that.
I didn't get that in that observation about common childhood, that somehow someone negates the other. And I think unless it's identifying something that we know sort of we have been getting wrong, and if someone says something like we need a common vision for childhood. Clearly, it's a sort of statement of the uncomfortable. We know we haven't, or we know we've been denying something we should have been accepting. Leanne's right. I mean, most teachers have a common idea. If left to their own devices, as we shall look at later, teachers will have an idea of schools being places where kids enjoy learning, where they thrive, where they develop, and so on. I don't think that's going to be contested. So what that means is that as a society, we've got something wrong. I think, I think as broadly, I mean, I know that as a society is a big term to use, but we have become confused over what we want schools to do, and we've become confused over what we want children to be. And I think I see it manifest itself most in this kind of almost dislike of children that our society projects. They become a problem. They become a problem you need to weld into sort of being effective workers or effective producers, or compare them unfavorably with the children of other nations that are better at maths or better at something else, or they are a problem in their behavior, and that is them. We sort of gaslight them into, you should like school, really. So if you don't like school, and so on. So I think we're a deeply confused culture and society.
And then I also wonder, when does a vision become a template? And does it matter? Does it matter who's coming up with this vision? Because there will be people who have vested interests. Social media companies, for example, will have vested interests and want children to hold certain views and outlooks. I would be worried about having a kind of a unified vision for children. But I like. Sorry, John, I keep interrupting you today.
No.
I liked what you said, that teachers do have a vision for children, but it kind of comes out of this sense of wanting to do children well, and yet there's a flexibility with it that allow children to flourish, to grow, to become full, whole, and rounded human beings.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I like you, Paul, I'm suspicious of the word vision, because it sounds like management speak. It sounds like the kind of, if only we could have a shared vision. It's those kind of managers who stand before your head teachers, indeed, who share you. We must have a shared culture and a shared vision. And I want to jump up in any meeting I've been in with that over the years. We all do. None of us disagree with why we became teachers. We all have a deep investment in the good that teaching can do. You don't have to start with that. So when that is said, it's masking something else. It's masking generally, and you teachers haven't been doing it.
I do worry about that.
Yeah. So I think it's coercive, as you say.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. It's like, I feel like when I studied like business at university or in high school, kind of company vision. It's like things you would learn about, isn't it? In business studies, not in your PGCE.
And it's most
word, like you said, John.
It's most extreme. It's that kind of where it shuts down. Well, we don't want to hear negative things.
Yes.
Just want to hear if you can't contribute to the vision. So you realize you don't have a shared vision. You have your vision, or you have some sort of structure, that you're going to impose.
And I also
Yeah.
think, like, you know, achievement and progress are big things in school, so it's not new to teachers.
Mm.
And then again, like, if the children are achieving, then hopefully they are thriving. Okay, they go hand in hand.
Yes.
And just because it's not been in government policy doesn't mean it's not happening in education.
Yeah.
Completely.
It seems, very, like I said to Paul before we came on, Labour are looking for ways to make their name in education. That's how it feels.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. And sorry, Paul.
Well, I think we'll come to that in the third story when we read about the Ofsted report.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering as well, because clearly Dame Rachel de Souza's office has done some research there, and they found out that children are actually ambitious about their future, something I've always believed. That children do hold, and they do harbor, you know, a sense of who they are. It's growing, it's changing, it's developing, but they do want to become things. And I love that line that was used in it. You know, they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Would that be your experience, that children have, you know, a sense of who they are, they have aspiration and ambition and want to contribute positively to the world?
From my point, I bet, I'm going to guess this, Leanne, that you find with all the difficulties you face in education, I bet you find that younger ones have more sense of idealism than older ones. I don't know. I just think that as they progress through our education system, quite naturally, that belief that you can, that stuff that is, you know, the vision that is, they realize how hollow the vision is. You can be whatever you want to be. That the world is your oyster. You make the most of it. All you have to do is, etc., etc., etc. That has been forced back on them in a system that is basically rigged against them, and they pick it up quite quickly.
Well, as you get older, the magic disappears, or the magic becomes believable.
You see through it as well. And I think some of the features of our education system is that kids quite naturally, not only are they quite, I agree with that, quite idealistic, quite they desire a better world, and they see this isn't it. And they see their schools aren't it either. I mean, you know, there was a fascinating thing. One of the things that jumped out of that report was that it was the Children's Society that said a third of children described themselves as unhappy.
Yeah.
What? A third?
Yeah.
You know, what are we doing? What on earth are we doing if a third of children describe themselves as unhappy?
Yeah. That was an interesting line. Yeah.
Yeah, I take issue. I took a bit of issue with that comment.
Yeah. One of the things I did, I was head of careers in 3 different schools. It's a fascinating job. Careers education is amazing. And you get these very privileged moments where you have these one-to-one interviews with children. And outside of the rigidity of the timetable and the framework of school and everything that goes on, they really share a lot of their insight about themselves, their vision and their aspirations and so on. And I suppose my recollection of this comes from something you said, John, about, you know, reality kicks in and they get a bit, blunted about what the world's about. Yes. But I do think deep down, they all harbor that kind of relationship with themselves, that want to contribute to the world and that need to do good. But confidence can be dented. You know, when children used to come to me and they say, sir, do you think there's any chance I could ever be a nurse or an engineer? And you kind of think, wow, you would be the greatest engineer and the greatest nurse ever. Why do you not believe in yourself? And it reminds me, you know, what are we doing wrong that kind of creates that sort of lack
I think
of confidence?
our education system is so data driven, and the data isn't hidden from the children. You know, a lot of the times it's a discussion with children. Yes. So from an early age, you're being told you are this grade or you are this level. Eventually it's going to sink into you and it forms part of your belief system.
Completely. I mean, one of the most pernicious things I experienced in education was when they went through this era of children should have targets that they should be aware of. And literally they'd write them on their exercise books.
Yep. We all did that.
Oh, well, your target is such, and you couldn't explain it. You'd say, well, this is a minimum target. You mustn't present them as a sort of ceiling. But students knew that if you said your target is D, what that meant and how the others would perceive them.
Yeah.
And it was an expression of that data-driven nonsense that Leanne, you're describing.
Yeah.
And students see it. They see what you're doing to them.
They do. They do.
And Paul, if you were a careers advisor, you were clearly the kind of a careers advisor that people should have had. And not the kind of careers advisor who said, "Well, you're never going to be a nurse," which I seem to remember at school.
Yeah. I think we had those in my day with those kinds of career advisors.
Wake your ideas up, Gibbs.
You'll never be a vet.
Yeah, a vet.
We got that, yeah. Anyway, that's all we have time for on the story of a shared vision for childhood. Now, another story that's kind of been mooching about in the murky world of education is this whole concept of overprescription, teacher autonomy, and so on. Now, most of my career was spent teaching in Northern Ireland. And whilst we do have some individuals and some particular schools that would overprescribe lessons and things and do kind of rob teachers of autonomy, this world is all quite new to me. And I was really aghast to read that there are managers, senior managers, who will walk into your room at, say, 19 minutes past 11 and expect you to have a certain PowerPoint up with certain information in your slide. I was gassed at that. I really, I have trouble coming to terms with that. John, how have we got to the point where, and I'm not saying every school is like this, of course, but how have we got to the point where there is an era of prescription and loss of autonomy?
Yeah, you're right, Paul. I find it astonishing, and I've experienced some of that. Certainly not so much in sixth form teaching, but in others. And one of the joys of being a teacher was that personal relationship and that improvisational quality you had in lessons. You know, that sort of feeling that you could go down a rabbit hole, or you could improvise, or you could adapt your lesson. You know, in a sense of autonomy was what you most prized as a teacher.
Yeah.
Of course, not you're left to you're abandoned. You know, you need resources, and you need structure. You want to know in a school, what should we be teaching right now, and what point of all the curriculum resources that give you the basis for being yourself.
Yeah.
But that's what you're describing, Paul. I think we've got there because, well, I'll go back to Michael Gove's The Blob. You know, that fear of teachers, that fear of teachers and fear of young people, that we have a society where we sort of suspect teachers are up to something. You know that jump across the Atlantic, Donald Trump, and it's one of his more absurd observations that students were going off in America to schools having a gender surgery without their parents knowing and being sent home again. It's all complete madness and nonsense. But the fact that you could say a thing like that was, in America particularly, but in this country as well, a sort of suspicion. What are teachers up to? We need to control them. I think that is where that comes from. And again, the managerialism and the data-driven stuff and all the competition that schools have, neoliberal competition that's infected our system. Yeah.
Fear, I think, behind a lot of this, and paranoia. Yeah. Leanne, obviously, my health, my well-being, and my body is a temple. I've never been in McDonald's in my life, but apparently, if you order a burger in Belfast, California, Paris, or London, you get the identical burger. It's the same color, the same amount of fries, so on and so forth. Is this not what is happening then to our schools? We are becoming the fast food of learning. And don't forget, okay, McDonald's looks good, but it lacks nutrition, it causes obesity, and it eventually kills us. Is that not what's going to happen here? We're eventually we're killing education.
So I'm not sure that's true. Maybe it's changed.
Which part of that, Leanne? No, my body being a healthy temple, or
No, that's true. I would never disagree with you on that. This is an educational podcast, not a diet one, not a lifestyle one. I've read in the past articles that maybe it's changed, but like chocolates and crisps in different countries. And actually, I know this is true because a certain very popular chocolate brand tastes different in different countries. So different countries, different taste buds, different cultures, different taste buds, different teachers, different personalities, different ways to teach the same thing. I'm sure you would teach a lesson different to me. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Just means that we have personalities and we're not robots. And I think that's a big part of teaching, is that you have to teach the way that you are. So like I teach as the person I am in front of the kids. Everyone is different. Doesn't mean we're teaching it wrong. I can teach the same content as you and the lesson might deliver a bit differently.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the mentions in the article are about people using Oak after lockdown and how many people use it and how it's so brilliant. And I think there are a lot of resources out there that are brilliant and that can help with your workload. Doesn't mean you have to follow them blindly. And I worry that that's what's happening with the new generation of teachers that are coming out. That recently there's been like a flooding of the education market with schemes and workbooks, and that new teachers that are coming out are maybe not being taught how to plan, let alone teach. And it's maybe not so necessary because there is so much, here is a lesson, teach it. And that's why I feel like, a lesson doesn't have to be a PowerPoint, but if you've not been taught how to plan, then you can't write a plan. If you've not been taught how to add, you can't add. And I think it's the same in teaching. And I do worry, about the amount of schemes that are out there. And new teachers possibly coming in that are just being given schemes to teach from.
Yeah. I just worry, and I mean, I did a lot of readings, and they say it's kind of strange-ish to people from Northern Ireland, where our system doesn't really do this, But so much of teaching, I think, is that kind of tacit kind of knowledge, that additional, that magic, that extra. Anybody can tell you that 2 and 2 is 4. Anybody can tell you that, but a teacher can do that in a very dynamic way with sweets and move them around and this, that, and the other. And you've great fun and great reward at the end. You can even eat the sweets at the end of the class. Yeah, and that feeds into that. It was very long.
You don't get awe and wonder from schemes.
Well, that's exactly where it was going, Leanne. You don't get curiosity. You don't get awe. You don't get wonder. And there's a great story of the science teacher in one of those articles who talks about, how she taught science and she allowed children, they had to put, I can't remember what it was, into a solution and see how it involved, but they weren't allowed to put anything else in, but she allowed some children to put a sweet or something in. All this curiosity opened. And I think a lot of us, fell in love with English or French, science, geography because of the passion and enthusiasm of our teachers. Surely, prescriptive lessons that literally are laid out like a template, like a plan, they must kill passion.
I mean, when you look at the content of an awful lot of courses, particularly exam courses, or if you're trying to teach sort of grammar and spelling and such like in younger kids, it's incredibly dull if you just present it as here's the information, do this, or if you take it from the textbook, because after all you could just read from a textbook and you could open up a textbook and read it to the kids or something like that. It's what you do with it as a teacher. And you learn. I think Dan's made a good point a moment ago, is that you do learn from other teachers. Teachers tell you this is a good technique. Try this resource works. You learn it, you pick this up. But when you try and copy someone else's style of doing, I remember doing this exactly as an early teacher, going into a class and seeing a teacher whose lessons were silent and yet productive. And I thought, I want my lessons to be like this. This is what I want. What do you do? What do you do? And he said, oh, well, I do this. I instruct them. I couldn't do it. because
Mm.
it was the fact that he'd been teaching 25 years,
Mhm.
and the kids all knew him, and he had his little eccentricities and
Mhm.
routines that they sort of liked.
Yeah.
That he, you can't touch Mr. So-and-so's lucky whatever. These things on his desk that you would think, what's also he's part of his set and his mystique that the kids liked. Whereas my
Yeah.
class was just a class. They hadn't established it yet.
Yeah, yeah. I did wonder as I read a lot about this, were these lessons, were they written, are they compiled by people who are teachers, or are they actually compiled by people who've never actually even set foot in a class, never mind taught a child? And I know they make a little claim about, oh, these are research-based and research-proven evidence, this, that, and the other. But I think in teaching, that's a different matter. Evidence-based research is crucial, but it is, it's got to have a place, it's got to have a moment, it's got to have the right people.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another debate that will rage on, no doubt. On to our final story. Sir Martin Oliver, the Chief Inspector, is 11 months into his 5-year tenure. It's been a bit of a bumpy year. They had the big listen. They had some issues to contend with in the media. But last week, he issued his annual report. Leanne, I've read it. It's not going to be a bestseller, I don't think. Is it reflective of everyday experiences, or do you think it's an attempt to whitewash a very bland first year in office and really kind of put behind him some very, very contentious issues and difficulties with the previous regime?
I think it talks about, looking at the fines, early years and schools and SEND, it talks about a lot of issues that teachers can't really fix. Yes, there is a SEND problem. Yes, there is a problem with not experienced, but professionals that we need in schools not being there when you need them, and absence rates, which I think has been a thing since COVID. Like I said, these are all things that teachers in classrooms can't really have much effect on by themselves. You need teams in education to work on these issues, these challenges.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Leanne's right. They do. The report does point out a number of issues and so on, and Ofsted does play a part in advocating for the most vulnerable children by drawing our attention to all of that. But I wonder, on publishing a report like this, John, will anything happen? Is it going to gather dust on a shelf and only people like us are going to read it?
Absolutely. This is the kind of report that was built, as you said, was written not to be read, except as a justification for itself. The fact that you had to write it the way you write it suggests something is wrong and we're not acknowledging it. It was a very dispiriting report. So not only is it dull, but it's dispiriting. When you start the report by saying things like, well, most kids are mostly fine. Imagine I asked you, said, well, how are your children? Well, they're mostly fine. Oh dear, mostly. What's the problem? Or how's your health? Mostly okay. Well, what are you not telling me? So what they're not telling, he said, well, it's a bit like, everything's mostly fine apart from the roof's on fire. There's poor attendance. We're not recruiting enough teachers. SEND's in a crisis. Mostly fine though, most of the kids. But the thing is, it's true. Most of the time, most kids will get through school.
Yep.
They're highly resilient. You see it on the news the whole time. There'll be some disaster somewhere. In the background, the kids are playing. They're the image from Gaza. And they're clearly destruction and misery everywhere. And yet in the background, some kids are larking around. They're incredibly resilient. They will survive a terrible education system. Most kids do. Most kids get through school and they look back on it and they shrug their shoulders. Some even enjoy it, but it's the failure of a significant minority, and significant enough, and a generalized, I think, failure that these symptoms, and they are symptoms. Why can't you get enough teachers? It should be a profession where you can't stop people wanting to be a teacher. Should be queues of people wanting to be teachers, really. And
Yeah.
we're not dealing with our special education needs kids. What? They should be that should be right top of the agenda. That's how can you not do that one thing? And what kids don't want to come to school after the lockdown? What does that tell you?
Yeah.
That tells you something really serious. You know, so yeah. Once again, it's things are basically okay. They're not.
Yeah, that's kind of that's the impression I got. Yeah, he listed a few problems and put them in the context of everything being okay. Basically, he whitewashed over everything. Yeah.
It says, one of the quotes is that is very rarely down to the services they receive, but it can be down to the services they do not receive. We know that as teachers. We see it a lot on the weekly review. That I know I've said it before, that we need specialists inside schools.
Yes.
You know, to take a bit of that, to share the workload of teachers so that we can teach.
Yeah. And if you don't have that sort of specialist support,
yeah,
what do you get? You get teachers being told how to teach because you're the problem, or you get that nasty old sit up and listen what's that called? I forgot what it's called now. Well, you know, the way you sit up and all that stuff. That kind of hyper-disciplined schools, if you teach in them, might work. Oh, that's the answer. I'm glad I teach here. But they are, again, a symptom of something very wrong. If you have to have schools like that, then you're doing something very, very wrong. That is the answer of a kind.
Yeah.
To a problem.
So there you are, Ofsted. Going home on your Christmas report is the comment, could do better. We'll be right back with our shows of the week. Now, I listened to Claire Cannon's clever show, Christmas Presents instead of Christmas Presents. Super show. It dealt with that, old theme, give the teacher an apple. At Christmas, do you give the teacher something? Do teachers nowadays, do we buy something for the pupils and so on? And, in the context of continuing financial hardship, Claire made some very, very good points. I thought, it's not the time necessarily, but you do want to show appreciation nonetheless for the children you teach. And you would like parents to kind of show some acknowledgement. We don't need it, we don't require it, but it's nice when it happens. So Claire offered a lot of very practical ways of giving children your time and your attention. That's definitely outside of prescribed lessons and definitely outside of the curriculum and so on, which of course children love. And I wanted to say as well, at this time of year, teaching can be very different in schools. The timetable may be kind of, fraying at the edges, attendance drops off and so on. It's tough few days for teachers. But I would always say these are often the days that children remember. You see them in a very different light. You see them in socially. You find out how they mix. You maybe get chances to talk to them and so on. And that definitely informs your teaching next term. Leanne, what have you listened to this week?
Mine was the Sunday Late Show with Bijesh. So, sorry, I'm backtracking Sunday because, like I said before, they get left out of weekly review because they come on after us. But the show was all about how can great assessment bring joy to schools. And I know when assessment week comes around, we all get a little bit scared and a little bit stressed of inputting data and 1s and 2s and 0s and 3s and whatever your mark scheme may be. So it was quite a scientific based show, quite like a research based. They talked about the psychometrics of understanding assessment. But I think if you can find use in assessment, then it can only benefit the kids and the teaching.
Yeah. And I should say, you're right about the Sunday shows. There's one show on at 1 o'clock today after us. That's Famida Chowdhury. We'll all be listening, I hope. John, what about you? What have you listened to this week?
Well, I was listening to a show I really enjoy. I've become a regular listener to this now. Lucy and Hannah's discussion of it's called Curriculum Conversations, and it was and what I like about this show is the format. It's the two of them. They have a great rapport, and they just talk.
Yeah.
And in the way that works on podcasts and on radio, listening to people who are enthusiastic and knowledgeable talk and let their conversation go where it may. And what they were talking about, the theme of the conversation was the curriculum, looking back on the national curriculum, their experience of it, and some of the things we talked about. The over-prescriptiveness, the rigidity of it, some of the things that worked and didn't work, and talking about it from the perspective of being parents as well. And Paul, what you said, this time of year is a great time to embrace the silly. Embrace the silly. Let the innocent. And I think it was Hannah said in her school, they had a form time competition. She's an art teacher, and she said they have a competition kind of to decorate the door of their tutor room or their form room. And she said, I love this because I always win it. So, you got an art teacher as your tutor. What a gift. You're going to win this. But some teachers were nervous about doing this because, the year 11s, they should be cracking on with something or other. Don't do that. Embrace the silly. Have the snow days. Have the silly days. Have the nonsense. That, as Paul rightly says, that's what you remember. You remember being taken out onto the grass and sat down by the teacher to, it's a sunny day, let's sit on the field. That you'll remember.
Yeah.
We need more memories being made.
Yes.
Teaching is about relationship. It's all about relationship. You will learn that 2 and 2 = 4 from somebody you like a lot quicker than you will learn it from someone you don't like.
Goodness, that is so true.
You'll remember it easier.
And you'll remember it easier. Yeah, definitely.
So true.
Yeah. Well, that's enough silliness from us this week. Lucy will be back with her dulcet tones next week. I'm not sure any of the three of us are available, but we nonetheless will see you all in the new year. We wish you a very happy Christmas. Make sure you get well rested and take care of yourself. Thank you very much to our sponsors, John Catt Books, Parent Kind, and Teachers Talk Connect. Thank you very much to Leanne and John, our panelists today. And don't forget to listen in next week, 10 o'clock Sundays in all the usual places. Bye now.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.